Hello, I'm Mantastic'c and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be talking about the Street Fighter collab that has gone live in North America. So, this is the second rerun of the Street Fighter collab, and it does introduce 3 new cards to be rolled along with new evolutions for the existing cards and various buffs and tweaks. But sadly, this is an underwhelming event. There is no truly outstanding magical card that I feel is going to change your pad life, and in addition to that, the bottom rarity just feels a little lacking. Like, they do stuff, and like the better bottom rarity cards, they're mostly buttons or a Blanca system style card. But basically, if you don't enjoy button farming and have no use for it, or you didn't roll 3 Blancas, I feel like the bottom rarity holds relatively little value for the average player as a whole. Now, to compensate for this bad rolling chances, because those do comprise 77% of the rolling pool, it only costs 6 magic stones to roll, which means monster exchanging for all of the 6-star cards except for Cody, if I'm not mistaken, is much cheaper because you only need 5 6-star Godfest exclusive fodder instead of 5 7-star Godfest exclusive. So if you have lots of 6 stars just kicking around and have no use, and some of these 6-star cards you feel like will add value to your monster box, it can be worth trading in. It's definitely a better approach than rolling, and I did roll a little bit in the previous run because the bottom rarity maybe was a little better, or maybe I was more interested in the franchise. But either way, I don't feel like this is a strong event to roll in because a lot of the cards, even though they were updated, just feel outdated because they just don't keep abreast of other options. And that's kind of the curse of lower Magic Stone events because they tend to have less value, especially at the bottom rarity cards. With that being said, each card has many different forms, and I will try and summarize each of their value as quick as possible because there's just so many things and not necessarily that many magical stuff. So Cody is one of the new cards to be released, and in his base form, he has a 1 turn of damage absorb void, which is a Fujin style active skill, and it's a type of active you need in basically every single dungeon except for World of Carnage 2 because something will have damage absorb. And with a 12 turn cooldown, it's definitely manageable. He has an L, he has potentially 4 skill boosts or double 7 combo with a 10 combo depending on your Super Awakening. So he can have offensive might, he has a valuable active skill you need to bring in a given dungeon, and his active skill also gives you an attack and a movement time buff, which will help ensure you actually kill that damage absorb spawn. And as a whole, like, this is definitely quite nice of a mono water sub if you're playing through content that requires this active skill solution. As a leader, you do have sizable bulk, but you have to utilize balance type cards, and you also need a healing solution due to having only 1 times RCV. You also need to have water and dark orbs, which is not something you're going to be able to system easily, so it's just a leader skill that could have some value, but I feel like it's just better off to use as a sub. For his evolved form, they have Super Blind Resist. They could have 4 skill boosts as well. They have 2 enhanced Cross Orb or Cross Awakenings. Basically, if you make a cross, he gets bonus damage, but there are not many blue teams that want to make a cross. Royal Oak matches 5, but it's better to match an L because they receive much more damage. And their active skill itself gives you no Skyfalls and replaces all orbs. So aside from the Blind Resist, they don't really provide that much value overall, and I would definitely look over that evolution form. For his pixel iteration, they have 2 attacker killers, double VDP, and a 10 combo, or they could have 4 skill boosts. So they definitely have high personal damage against attacker types, but attacker types are not necessarily the most common spawn in the game. But at least they have a 1 turn cooldown, which unlocks the whole board and creates 1 water orb. And you can use this active skill every turn. So if you are truly afraid of locked orbs messing up whatever leader you are playing with, they can be a wonderfully strong solution. And at least for World of Carnage 2, Gills is an attacker type, so that does give a little bit of extra zest, but I'm not sure how I could truly fit this individual onto a given team, I feel, just because, like, it does have nice stuff. It does counter some mechanics, but it only counters locked orbs. It doesn't give resist, it doesn't give, like, an L, it doesn't give other things that just make cards more appetizing overall. For their weapon assist, they have 80% poison, which is definitely meaningful, and 2 enhanced water orbs, along with that same damage absorb counter active skill that his base form had. The main drawback of this weapon is that it's so similar to Blue Samurai 3 in that Blue Samurai 3 has 80% resistance jammer, so a different metric though, but it gives a skill boost and it has an 8, not a 12 turn cooldown. So depending on the type of dungeon you are playing through and how closely spaced apart the damage absorption spawns are, Cody's knife may or may not necessarily be a better option compared to the Blue Samurai 3. And Blue Samurai 3 is naturally just a better universal solution because skill boost works for every team. 2 enhanced water orbs may not necessarily work for a given team. But at the same time, it is still a valuable weapon assist. And if you feel like if you don't have the Samurai 3 weapon, this is definitely going to be a wonderful option for yourself overall. They are an orb skin card, so you can't monster exchange for them, but you can directly purchase them if that's something that interests you. For Nash, in his base form, they have Super Blind, they have a 2-turn color absorb counter, and respectable personal damage. The main drawback that I can see is that it has so much overlap with New Year's Artemis, who just does more. They have infinitely better offensive might, they have a stronger active skill, I feel, overall, because they do have the color absorb void, but they also make orbs, which is definitely meaningful, and they also can clear Awaken Bind, so it does have a bit more flexibility. So Nash in his base form is definitely eclipsed, and at the same time, you probably want to run his Evolve form because they're actually a powerful leader. So Evolve Nash has the capacity to lead a strong team while also having a 2-turn base cooldown that generates 3 light and wood orbs, which is important because their activation requirement is matching light and wood. So 2 Nashes is a system, and you don't have to transform. They're just ready to go as soon as you enter a dungeon, which definitely makes your life much easier. At the same time, they have significant amounts of damage against void spawns, but the problem is they won't have much personal damage if you don't have 9 wood orbs, which is not something you're going to have on a regular basis. Sure, you can make light and wood on every single turn with dual leaders, and you can enjoy +4 combos and 43.75% damage reduction along with big health and RCV multipliers. So it is definitely a strong and capable leader. It is definitely weaker than Nadeko or Royal Oak, who just have better active skills. Nadeko and Royal Oak just have, their active skills, because they transform, are much more upgraded by comparison, and they don't have any skill boosts after they transform, which in turn gives them more useful awakenings. It's not to say that Nash is a weak leader by any means, it's just that he is eclipsed by Nautilus and Nadeko, but he is monster exchangeable, whereas Nadeko and Nautilus you had to actually roll, so it's possible you have many good wood subs, but no team to actually utilize them on, and Nash can definitely be a great solution. Definitely a powerful leader overall. He is bulky, he is going to be easy to play. Just be mindful of the fact that your subs will have to be dealing most of the damage, because he himself has no damage unless you match a VDP. For Pixel Nash, it doesn't really accomplish that much overall. Like, cool, there are 6 skill boosts, but I would prefer to have a very strong and competent leader as opposed to a sub that does some stuff. It does give damage reduction, but if you want damage reduction, Susanoo is going to be a better option, who is a Pantheon card as well. And it can do stuff, but it's not quite where I would want it to be. And as a leader, it does have nice multipliers, but they are weaker multipliers. And they need to have 5 or more connected wood orbs, which you can't do with their base active skills. You have to rely on subs, which may not be possible. System-based leaders tend to be the strongest for the reason that they can make their orbs on a regular basis. And then finally, for his weapon assist, you have the enhanced wood combo awakening and 2 team RCVs, along with color absorb void for 2 turns as well, which gives orb movement time and haste. So it is a valuable active skill. Color absorb or Attribute Absorb is a valuable mechanic to have. It does give bonus damage to wood teams. It does increase your healing output, which could be an issue for Nautilus-based teams. So if you do have Nautilus and you want to augment your healing output, this can be a reasonable way to do so if you're trying to bring Color Absorb into the dungeon as well. But at the same time, if you don't have a strong wood leader, you probably are missing out on utilizing their Uvo form, because it is actually quite a strong leader. For Ryu, in his base form, they have lots of L's, they have some personal damage, but I don't really feel like it's going to serve any purpose. Like, Ryume is another L-generating type card, and it does its job better if you need a sub that can do so. So Ryu is not necessarily going to be picked for that. Ryume just has way better damage output as well. Their active skill is still okay. It does unlock the board, but again, it's so similar to Ryume that I feel like it's just not that special. As a leader, you need to use an active skill every single turn, and even with a 4-turn cooldown and dual leaders, you can't do so, and that's definitely going to be awkward. They don't have any bonus combos, they don't have auto follow attack, they do have big numbers, but big numbers don't mean much when you don't have those extra zest, and you can't make an easy-to-form system. It's just going to be hard to use an active skill every single turn to really capitalize upon what they have the potential potential to do, because without the active skill, you don't get the damage reduction, you don't get your big attack multiplier. It's just a little awkward, and I would definitely look more into their evil Ryu form, because their evil form is a strong leader. So they have 4 team health, and they have strong VDP damage as well, so they can produce damage against certain types of spawns when you have enough Dark Orbs. Their active skill creates an instant 3x3 box of dark, so you could have up to 9 Dark Orbs made on a given turn, which is great because it solves your activation requirement. And its activation requirement is that you have to be above 50% health. If you are above 50% health, you get 50% damage reduction. And this has beautiful synergy when paired with Ina. I actually have a clear on my YouTube channel of me using Ina and Evil Ryu and just walking through Alt Shura 1, like nothing really stops the team, because Ina gives the auto follow attack, Ryu gives +3 combos, and together you have 75% damage reduction when above 50% health, and you have a pretty generous amount of health, and there's no big preemptives, not many large attacks in Shura 1, so it's a nice pairing overall. Orb generation is not too hard to come across if you have, like, say, Yurisha or Nell, who I used on my team, who have 4-turn base cooldowns. Ina has a 2-turn cooldown. You can make Dark Orbs on a regular basis, and even if you can't, you can just stall for a turn. You tank damage as long as you're above 50% health. So this 50% health clause is definitely a problem in things like, say, World of Carnage 2, where things hit much harder and multi-hits exist. Multi-hits are dangerous because when you do receive a multi-hit, well, the way the damage reduction works is it checks to see if you're above 50% health and then reduces that damage. So let's say there are 5 hits. The first 3 hits you reduce because you're still above 50% health. But then after the 3rd hit, you drop below 50%. Those 4th and 5th hits will now deal their full damage and you become incredibly vulnerable. You're probably going to die as well. So just be aware that multi-hits are the bane of your existence, or just multiple spawns that attack at the same time. But at the same time, for Shura 1, it's not really going to be an issue, and you can dish out spectacular amounts of damage because row stacking is quite efficient with Ina, and row stacking is just a very powerful way to layer in damage overall. So I do enjoy that leader pairing. Both of them can utilize machine killers quite effectively, or leader swap if necessary. So you do have strong personal damage against machine type spawns, and both Evil Ryu and Ina don't actually need to transform, so you can just go, which is definitely nice overall. And as I mentioned before, there is a clear on my YouTube channel if you're interested in watching that. For his Yuvo form, it has 1 turn of Void Damage Void, which is countering the Gray Shield effect, which is nice, but he doesn't outpace Fagan Rai or Dire. Yes, he does have 2 skill boosts, and neither of them are providing as much, but post-transform, Fagan Rai and Dire just provides so much more value overall, I feel. And the main place to utilize them right now is on Ryume teams, and Ryume teams can't utilize this individual here because it is the wrong typing. So, like, it is okay of a card, but I feel like their evil form is just definitely the stronger option overall. For their Pixel evolution, they do have some added bulk of team health and team RCVs, and they do have modest personal damage with a VDP, but at the same time, it's not really providing a specific niche that it's going to cover. Like, it does give you a massive 5 times attack boost and an L of light, but it's not countering necessarily other mechanics that well. It's a 9-turn cool. It's kind of possibly awkward to work around. Doesn't give resist. Their other forms are just going to be stronger. I'm kind of surprised they made all these new forms and just really didn't give them that much love overall. And you could argue that these are nice leader skill multipliers, but you have to always have 5 or more connected light orbs. And light orb generation may be difficult for the team, especially when your leaders only have a 9-turn cooldown, so it could be a little hard to work around. Because if you do want to use lights, like say the low cooldown orb generators, they're probably just better to use as leaders because they are just stronger leaders themselves. For his weapon, it gives 2 team health and 2 skill bind resist. An unusual combination, and at the same time, skill bind resist does have less value overall, I'd say, because most things have enough skill bind resist. But with that being said, if you need skill bind resist on a given team, this is going to be one of the best options because it gives health. And more health is always a good thing, regardless of what team you're playing through. So if you need skill bind resist, I would definitely lean towards this. But at the same time, his evil form is still a strong leader, so I wouldn't convert to the weapon until you feel like you've exhausted the value of his leadership potential. Next is Chun Li, and Chun Li is really only truly great in her new Yuvo form. And I'm just gonna kind of glaze past the first form because it doesn't do much. You could argue that the second form has some value because it has 99 turn water Skyfall, but with things like Velkhana or people that just transform and give water Skyfall buffs, it's just less useful to actually have a 99 turn Skyfall buff because it's only a 7% increase, whereas these other things are 15%. So they're definitely going to overwrite your Skyfall buff, and it's just a little problematic. You don't get the continuous Skyfall. They do remove Awoken Binds and create Water Orbs, but it's not a full Cleric style active skill, so you can't rely on her for that. And if it was a full Cleric style active, you could definitely utilize them as a sub, but that is reserved for her newer form. So her newer form is an attacker type, so you can utilize them on your Tanjiro team. She is also water, so you could anyways, but she comes with 4 or 5 skill boosts depending on if you want the 10 combo or a regular skill boost as a Super Awakening. She has 2 enhanced combos for one enhanced combo for water, 1 enhanced combo for fire. I just like mixing 2 colors because it's rare you're going to actually need to match 2 combos of both of those colors to really capitalize it. If it was one of the same, it'd be a little better overall, but I guess we just can't be too picky in this case. Her active skill provides you with a full Cleric solution of full Bind, Awoken Bind, and Unable to Match Orb Clear along with +3 combos. Useful to have, 8 turn cooldown, definitely workable overall. She does have a high-ish attack stat. She has large amounts of RCV, and her HP is quite low. And I feel like this is kind of like the curse of water cards right now, because back in the day, water cards used to be huge health, no RCV, and we've completely reverse the roles. Nowadays, most water cards have too much RCV and basically no health. And at the same time, the vast majority of leaders don't really require RCV either because they have too much of it. I guess you can make arguments that Velkhana doesn't really quite needs RCV but doesn't bring it, and also Royal Oak as well. But at the same time, Chun-Li's stats are not well distributed for other teams because hitting health thresholds could be a little difficult when you have so little health. It is definitely a bit of a drawback, but she does have offensive might, and as a leader, you can definitely utilize her. She does give you easy combos, large amounts of damage reduction, but you have to match water and fire, so you need to actually have generation of those orbs all the time, and I would rather just use double Sena as opposed to Sena Chun-Li. If you had your Sena of yourself, you could say Sena as a sub, but the point is, you're just using an inferior leader overall, but still powerful overall as a Cleric solution for water or fire teams. Just be mindful of the lower health stats. For her Pixel form, I don't know why they made this form. It doesn't really do that much overall. Like, the other forms do more, and we're just going to pretend it didn't exist because Gung-Ho kind of pretended they didn't exist. For her weapon assist, I don't feel like it outpaces the Cleric potential of her Yuvo form because it gives an attack while above 80%, which will be buffed in the future. I just read the patch notes in JP recently. Like, it's going to be buffed to above 50%, but it's still not the most efficient offensive awakening. The active skill is not quite where we want to be. Again, those Skyfall buffs play a lower role, and 2 enhanced water orbs. Like, it is nice. The tape resist is okay, but tape resist is less used overall, I'd say. So I feel like it's just a lower priority weapon overall. Next is M. Bison, and before I start talking about them, I want to ask you, ladies and gentlemen, what did the water buffalo say to his male offspring as he left for his first day of school? Bye, son. I like puns, and hopefully you do too, but either way, M. Bison in his base form is a reasonable mono dark card because it does provide 6 effective skill boosts, it does have some rows, and it does create it does have orb generation, so it's not a terrible thing, and they have reasonable leadership potential. Like, they have nice multipliers, but they don't have bonus combo or auto follow attack, so Evil Ryu Ina is not going to really want to mix with him, I feel, overall. Maybe as a sub if you need more skill boost, sure, but it's kind of fishing a little bit, I feel, overall. For their first evolved form, they can have 4 skill boosts, they generate 12 Dark Orbs, and they also have a 150,000 button 5 times. So if you are button farming, or farming dungeons in whatever capacity you do, you can solve potentially 3 floors with 1 active skill, because 2 rows are 2 floors, and the button is another. So this can definitely be a powerful solution for your dark farming needs. I wouldn't necessarily use it beyond that purpose overall, because I don't feel like it provides enough value, because if you don't take advantage of the button, it's not going to be quite that amazing. But at the same time, even if you take advantage of several of those aspects, it's still not bad. A double row maker is still reasonable. For his pixel form, he does have strong VDP potential against dragon, attacker, and physical spawns, but that's kind of all he really does. I don't feel like he's fulfilling any particular role or situation that well, and I feel like it's definitely an evolution you can kind of glaze over, so to speak. For his weapon assist, it gives you 3 rows and 60% poison resist, along with the valuable active skill from his second form. It gives you the 2 dark rows and the 150,000 button 3 times, or 5 times. So I would prefer to use this because this is actually a strong weapon, a double row maker with a button. So again, you can solve 3 floors, but the extra rows make your rows do even more damage, and even if you can't take advantage of every single aspect of it, you're still useful if you can get 2 out of the 3 things being valuable. So I feel like this is definitely his strongest form because it just will open up doors for your mono dark farming needs, because you can inherit this over someone like Chuan, who has a 4 turn based cooldown, utilize it turn 1, and then just rely on Chuan for the rest of the dungeon. Beautiful stuff overall. Gil in his base form is just not where we want to be. TPA just doesn't take off. Like, TPA is just... Gunho tries to make TPA kind of cool. They add TPA cards in once in a while, but it just never stacks up well enough against Rose and Orb Enhances and just all the other offensive Awakening 7 combos. Like, it just doesn't hold a candle to it, so gonna look over that. For their other first of all form, again, it's like 6 skill boosts, sure, but like it doesn't do much else, I feel, overall, because his Evo form is the most unique of them because you're basically a green Mikage in terms of leadership potential, which means you need 3 wood combos to function. But if you have 3 wood combos, you're nigh invincible. You have 10 million auto follow attack, you have 16 times effective health, large amounts of offensive might, you have respectable personal damage, your subs will probably have large amounts of personal damage, and you do have 5 skill boosts and you don't have to transform, which is unique because Mikage does have to transform, which is another hurdle, whereas Gil doesn't. Sadly, Mikage is obviously a much better leader. Mikage gives you bonus combos, which makes life easier. They have a much stronger active skill. Gil's active gives you a single row, and a single row doesn't even give you 3 combos, so even using his 6-turn active skill, 6-turn cooldown active, doesn't solve your problems, and I think that's a bit of an issue. Whereas Mikage will give you a row and a spinner, and with all that extra movement time that Gil doesn't bring, like, Mikage can fish out extra Dark Orbs, so his active can help guarantee you survive, and the spinner keeps you alive throughout the rest of the dungeon. Gil doesn't. But maybe if you have a way to generate enough Wood Orbs on a regular basis, maybe you can make it work, but I feel like it's too risky overall, but hey, maybe you have ways to do so. Maybe in shorter dungeons it can definitely work out where you can use an active skill every turn and you're just blessed with enough Wood Orbs overall. So it is definitely a strong leader, but its feast and famine nature will make it difficult to play consistently. Finally, his pixel form. Like I said, like TPAs, like he does have reasonable TPA damage, but wood teams don't want to match TPA. Nautilus wants to match Rose. Nadeko wants to match 2 wood combos, so that means the TPA might take away from that. And Gil's other form, well, you probably just want to use him as other form if you want a leader anyways, and you didn't have one, so I just feel like there's no great place to utilize their pixel form. For their weapon assist, they have 80% blind, which is nice, a skill bind resist, and 20% jammers, and they do make 2 wood orbs. Sorry, they changed 2 rows to wood. So, like, you can make lots of wood orbs, but at the same time, it does have that heavy overlap with Samurai 3, who does provide a skill boost, and a skill boost is probably going to be more important compared to a skill bind resist and jammer, a single jammer, because skill bind resist is seldom needed, so it is still a useful and strong weapon. Definitely better if you don't have Samurai 3, but if you do have Samurai 3, it's going to be less appealing. For Akuma in his base form, he does have large amounts of personal damage. He can have up to 32 times against any opposing spawn, but the problem is you have to have 7 combos and attack and be below 50% health. Now, it's definitely a situation you can engineer, but if you're swipe farming through stuff, usually you want to have cards with just attack well below 50%, such as Archangel Lucifer, who has 4. You swipe, no combos required, max damage output. Akuma doesn't have that luxury. You have to make 7 combos. So unless you have lots of bonus combo cards and you are able to maintain that low health threshold, it's not going to be as desirable. In terms of his active skill, it gives you a fixed 4 elemental Skyfall, which is useful for certain ranking dungeons, but I feel like Gunho is kind of shying away from ranking dungeons where you'd use a bicolor, like such as Magic Lin, solve it perfectly, and then pray that the 30 orbs that fall down Skyfall into position because there's only 4 elements created. Damage stick for sure, but I can't really foresee a particular place we can truly capitalize upon it just because it mixes them. If it was all attack while below 50%, this would be a much stronger, much different story because his damage would be great and no effort overall. For his evolved form, it could be amazing if the meta changes because they do have 4 skill boosts. They can have super blind or they can have significantly more offensive might because they do have a high attack stat. And they have follow-up attack, they have skill bonuses, they're useful awakenings overall. But what makes them powerful is their active skill. For a 22 turn cooldown, you can have 3 turns of damage absorb counter. So you can bypass damage absorption for 3 turns. And if Gung Ho starts releasing more spawns back to back that have damage absorption, or heaven forbid, super resolve with damage absorb, because that's going to be so much fun to play with, Akuma will not have much value because right now Gung Ho tends to favor multiple spaced out damage absorption spawns. So the 3 turns will never be able to cover all your needs, and if a 22 turn cooldown, it's going to be difficult to actually charge it back up without excessive amounts of stalling. So this this evolution does have strong potential if the meta changes. Like I said, if it shifts, Akuma will become so much more popular to utilize as a sub because he provides a nice plethora of beneficial aspects. But until that day comes, I feel like it's going to be a little bit awkward. And their leader skill looks nice, like big multipliers. But you need to hit 9 or more combos in order to get this. It's all or nothing. If you have 9 or more combos, big numbers. But if you don't, highly vulnerable. So you need 7x6, and even someone with +3 combos, I guess that probably should work if it's +3 combos, but even so, I think it's a little bit dicey overall, but the multipliers are nice. But again, if you can't take advantage of that active skill, it's going to be a little awkward possibly to drag it around, so to speak, because it's a longer cooldown. But hey, that 35% gravity is definitely helpful against non-void spawns such as like the Manoas and Shura 1, because that will take away a massive amount of their health and make them just easier to deal with. For his pixel form, lots of L's and nowhere to truly capitalize upon it, and it is a 4-turn cooldown that gives an attack buff, but I feel like I would probably want to just run Yuri Shaw instead because Yuri Shaw provides more benefits, albeit to less skill boost, but Yuri Shaw is just going to be a stronger option overall. And again, I feel like Akuma in his first of all form or his weapon assist will have more value overall because his weapon assist has that same powerful active skill, but if it doesn't charge up, which is difficult because of the 22 turn cooldown, it helps prevent you accidentally not using your base skill. So the high cooldown does work in your favor. It also works against you if you want the active skill itself, but we're going to pretend you probably didn't want the active skill. But if it does charge up, it's probably not a terrible thing either, but it still gives a skill boost, recover bind, and a team health. So it is still a useful weapon assist. It gives you bulk, helps you transform easier, universally helpful, long cooldown, prevents accidental overcharging, useful to have overall. And again, if we start encountering more spawns with damage absorption that requires multiple turns of countering, it will become more valuable then. For Sakura in her base form, they do have 4 unique killers and 10 combos, so they could have large amounts of personal damage if they line up. They also have a 4-turn active skill that gives you movement time, bonus combos, and orb generation along with unlocking the board. So a useful amount of stuff, but I don't really foresee a particular place we can truly utilize them overall because it does some nice stuff, but it's not, I feel, enough necessarily. Like, there are stronger and more reliable damage sticks available. I guess the active skill can be helpful if you don't want to run Horus, but Horus does provide a shorter base cooldown, which means it's easier to inherit a key and active over top, which again has pros and cons in itself. Sakura also has very low base health, which can definitely be a hindrance when you try and include them on teams. So I feel like it does a fair amount of useful stuff, but I feel like just not enough to truly set them apart overall, but not bad still, I feel, because the attacker type does let them be used on Tanjiro teams, which again might be something of relevance because Horus is the wrong typing. In her first evolved form, she could function as a reasonable healing solution with offensive might because she has she can have double 7 combo with 10 combo, so she can have significant amounts of personal damage while also having a high attack stat. The only drawback is she may not provide enough healing. Like, it's only 3 enhanced hard orbs, which I guess is a reasonable amount, but her RCV value is quite low. At only 713 before pluses, it's not that high compared to someone, say, like Amaterasu, who can get thousands of RCV by comparison. So I feel like it's going to be a little bit more strained healing, but if you only needed a bit of healing and it's something that does damage, Sakura could be a viable option. Her active skill also gives you a 2-turn delay and then a 4 elemental Skyfall. I feel like this active skill has value when you first enter a dungeon because you can delay and get more effective skill boosts, but the active skill has less value as you progress further and further, whereas Amaterasu's active is meaningful throughout the whole dungeon, so a little bit of a weaker active skill because it can't fulfill that kind of cleric needs either. For her Yuvo form, you do have 2 of those cross awakenings. You do have super jam resist. You can have reasonably high personal damage if you match 10 combos with crosses, but I feel like there are much more reliable sources of damage dealers possible, and the active skill does give you RCV and attack buff, which is helpful, and a combo count and changing orbs to fire and to water, so it could definitely be used on Sena teams. It does not unlock the board, so you still could be vulnerable, but I don't know, like, I feel like it's just doing a bit of useful stuff. It is nice buffing, but can you justify bringing them on your team? And again, that very low health stat is something I feel like is going to be a bit of a hindrance overall. For her pixel form, lots of time extends, so I guess that is something cool. You do have super poisonous, you do have reasonable personal damage, but I feel like it doesn't fulfill a meaningful role. Like, I don't think you need 4 more seconds from a sub, and it doesn't really bring that much beyond poison resist otherwise. Like, you get bonus combos, unlocking, and column of fire generation through the active skill, so it's not really solving problems that much either. So I feel like it's just a bit of an awkward evolution. I'm kind of surprised it was actually made. For the weapon assist, it gives you team health, team RCB, which is always helpful. 2 enhanced fire orbs. I've made a little typo, I think, and an enhanced hard orb awakening. So you can add in healing potential for a mono fire card if you need a healing solution, and it can give bulk and offensive might. So useful weapon assist in that regards for sure. And again, it has a delay, so if you inherit it over someone, you can fish out extra effective skill boosts, and this is definitely quite a useful weapon assist overall, I feel. It does quite a bit of work, and it's a nice way to layer in additional healing and bulk and passive damage, so pretty nice overall. And if your team converts red orbs to something else, like say Nadeko, those enhanced orbs do not go to waste. For Sagat in his base form, I don't think it does too much. His evolved form, they do have potential for high amounts of personal damage with a reasonable attack stat, but it's just really a damage stick. He only has 1 skill boost if you choose the damage route, so it's nothing special in that sense either. Like, you can get transforming cards of more skill boosts that have a much higher output overall. For his evolved form, this is going to be probably the most used one for many players who have strong mono fire teams because he can provide 4 or 5 skill boosts. He does have super blind resist. He has 3 enhanced fire combos for a significant boost in passive damage, and his active skill will unlock the board and give you 6 fire orbs from non-heal. So Tanjiro teams can rejoice. It's another great way to add an additional orb changer, a low base cooldown to inherit over top. It counters locked orbs, which could be a bit of a problem if you have a full locked board, and the bonus passive damage for the entire team can definitely add up. A strong mono fire card overall for sure. Only drawback is that fire does have a highly competitive subpool, so he could definitely get pushed out, and he does have skill boosts, he does have that blind resist, he does have passive damage, but if we're being exceptionally picky, he doesn't solve that many mechanics of his active skill. Yes, you can counter locked orbs, but he doesn't have that L awakening, so you can't do it naturally through him. And things like, say, Christmas Gremory or Nezuko, they bring an active skill you need to have in a given dungeon. His active skill is nice, and the low cooldown does make it easier to inherit over top of, but it is still a little bit of a drawback, I feel, overall, just not having a little bit of extra zest. Maybe if it's, say, give a small little buff to, like, whatever stat, it could be a little bit nicer, but still, it is a strong evolution overall if you are lacking powerful monofire subs. Pixel form really doesn't do that much by comparison. I know it feels like maybe I'm glancing over stuff, but due to the fact that this has way too many cards, it's just not worth talking about something if it's something you're not even going to necessarily pursue. And if you do find a card interesting, you can definitely read through it on my website at your leisure. For his eye patch, you have a total of 80% resist overall and attack while below 50%, which is still a reasonably rare awakening, I feel, overall. So it can definitely help augment your damage output for teams that want to be lower health. The resists can definitely be useful, but I definitely would have preferred if the resists were all of the same kind, because it's easier to team build if it was 80% resist in one thing as opposed to a 20, 20, 40. A little bit harder to work, like, to cover all the stuff that you necessarily want to, but still a useful weapon overall. And if you don't find yourself finding value out of his potential sub form here, you can definitely look into his eye patch. And then lastly, for the 6-star cards, so many of them in total, we have Karen. And Karen can have reasonably strong personal damage with attack well above 80%, but it's like, it does get buffed in JP, but it's still not that strong of an offensive solution. You do get the ability to make fire or make a cross of light orbs and +1 combo, but I don't really foresee teams necessarily needing to utilize this. So you're basically just a skill boost card who can unlock the board. Not so great overall, I feel, unfortunately. For her evolved form, she is going to be an exceptionally strong color cross leader because she brings her own 7x6 board, which is one of the most important things for color cross teams because bigger space means more crosses, more damage, easier time overall, and a flat 4x health and recovery, so useful overall. You just need to match color crosses to ramp up your damage multiplier, which goes to sky-high levels. Not a bad thing overall. Her active skill is still pretty helpful too. You get 5 fire, 5 light, which is 2 crosses, and 5 hard orbs, and RCV and time extend bonus. So even if you don't like color crosses, I still think she can be a respectable sub because a useful active that does counter 2 different mechanics and orb generation. Also has team health, follow-up attack. That cross awakening might have situational use, but it's not a terrible sub overall. Not amazing, but if color crosses are not your jam, not a bad thing to have overall. For her pixel form, I don't think it does particularly much. It does a bit of several things. Some team health, which is nice, some personal damage, some passive damage, but the active skill doesn't solve mechanics, it gives you bonus combos. So I feel like if you don't counter or solve mechanics, it's very hard to justify a card's inclusion unless they do massive amounts of personal damage or something equivalently useful, and that's not the case for her pixel form. For her weapon assist, it gives you team health, team RCV, and cloud resist, but if you have like even one of the 2 more premier cloud resist options such as Amatsu or Fagan Rai, this weapon has so much less value because Fagan Rai and Amatsu, they give you a skill boost, cloud resist, and either 2 team health or 2 team RCV, and it's nice to be focused in one because usually you only need to bolster one trait for a given card, and oftentimes that is health. So Fagan Rai is probably going to take priority, and that skill boost does definitely make a difference. Maybe you could argue if you need this active skill, you don't have a way to get RCV or movement time buff, you could, but at the same time, I don't think it's that magical of a weapon assist overall. And now we come to the 5-star cards, which are going to be a significant downgrade overall and probably lets me talk a little faster. So Dan is not the man, I feel, because he does have a 3-turn cooldown. He does make an L of fire orbs, but that's it. Just making orbs. No extra zest, no unlocking, no movement time, no buffs, whatever. So his active skill is not so great. He does have 4 skill boosts. He does have some personal damage. He does have some passive damage, but we want cards that can do things. I was arguing that Sagat may not even have a place on teams, and he's actually much stronger by comparison to Dan, so I don't really foresee a valid use for Dan, but he is new, so maybe he'll get buffed in the future. Who knows? Pixel Dan does respectable VDP damage, for sure, but in mixing a lot of offensive awakenings that don't have much synergy, I do say that like his active could be useful, the big shield, and then 5 turns of RCV and movement time and attack, which can be nice, but you can't system the active skill. Its 12-turn cooldown prevents you from actually having a reliable way to overwrite these debuffs, and opposing spawns can overwrite your 5 turns of buffs, so that is definitely a bit of a drawback overall. Can't really find a place to utilize him efficiently. For Cami, you have personal damage against attackers, but it's tied to 7 combos, and like I said, for killer stuff, I like my killer cards to not have a combo requirement because I like to swipe as mindlessly as possible and watch the big numbers appear. Cami can't do that, but Cami does have big numbers when you are able to actually hit 7 or more combos. Her pixel form really doesn't do too much unless you have no other double row makers available, because a 7-turn double row maker is actually pretty good value, because if you think about it, you can make 2 rows and solve 2 different problems, which is definitely helpful. Low cooldown, but the value hinges on how many other double row makers you have, because with a double row maker, a large appeal is converting the board to one color and then using the double row maker. So then you have a 18-12 split, which is easy to combo or solve in whatever pattern is necessary for your given leader. For Ken, he does have large damage output potential, but that's all he does. He just has large offensive might, but his attack stat is also terribly low, so it kind of counteracts all his offensive awakenings. Like, it's kind of silly in my opinion. His active skill gives you a column of fire orbs and bonus combos, so I really don't foresee any true usage for him. Like, we don't need damage sticks that don't provide any value in other way, shape, or form overall. Maybe you could say the leader skill is useful because the numbers look nice, but you have to use an active every turn, and Ken's can't do that. If Ken's had a lower cooldown, sure, you can system, maybe it's more viable, but it's going to be just difficult overall, I feel, because you also need 2 fire combos. For his pixel form, he, like Cami, has strong offensive might against attackers, but it's again tied to his need to hit 7 combos. He also has a terribly low attack stat. I just don't understand. I thought Ken was kind of offensive in Street Fighter, but I clearly am mistaken overall. He is an orb skin card, so you could purchase it, but I wouldn't do that, I feel, overall. For Vega, they are a reasonable passive damage solution for mono dark teams. They have 4 rows and 2 enhanced dark combos, so they can provide passive damage, so like your Evil, Ryu, and Ina teams could benefit. They give an attack buff and changing, and a unique board changer. They will lock light and hard orbs, then convert all the rest to dark. So you get lots of dark cores, but it can be unreliable, but it's really just a passive damage solution. It's not truly countering mechanics. Maybe the attack buff is something that could be helpful if you don't have something like, say, Yuri Shaw for a much more reliable orb generation rate, but it could be a possible solution. Pixel Vega does have some offensive might when above 80%, which will be buffed in the future, but it's only 5 times attack bonus. It's not that great. Maybe as a Muzan sub you could argue, but without any orb generation from their active and Muzan wanting orbs more than anything else, I feel like it's going to be a bit of a tough sell, especially with a 10-turn cooldown, which makes it harder to inherit stuff over top. For Mika, it could be a niche counter to spinners because they do a rainbow board changer, including jammers, and then they lock the entire board. So if you have no other way to counter spinners, and spinners are ruining your life, sure, maybe you can make arguments for utilizing Mika, but highly niche overall, and there's many other counters available. Her pixel form has 3 physical killers, can get a 7 combo, which takes a bit of effort, but she can use physical killer latent, so a strong solution for physical type spawns, and is not as reliant on making combos, which is nicer because you can just kind of swipe stuff with relative ease. But again, situational overall, hinges on what other physical killers you have. Zhang, if I don't know if I'm saying that right, has respectable machine killing potential and does potentially create up to 18 fire orbs, but if you need a machine killer to do stuff for you, Pixel Napoleon is way superior, and I feel like his pixel form is actually more interesting because it gives you a way to counter spinners because it locks the whole board, and then it deals 2 million button damage, 2 million true button damage to a single enemy. So button farmers can rejoice because that's actually quite a big button. But at the same time, there's a bigger button in the 5-star rarity, and you can't increase or augment this button value. It's 2 million or 2 million. You can't make it go higher, which can definitely be a problem if you need a bigger button. But hey, it's a nice strong button, reasonably short cooldown at 10, definitely nice to have overall. Dualism is basically like a very bad A10. He does have like the similar archetype of a 10 combo and a 7 combo and some killers, but I feel like with his terribly low attack stat and water just being a disadvantaged color and no skill boost and A10 already just falling behind, it's really hard to truly justify his inclusion, I feel, on a given team. Maybe you can say, well, I clear 5 turns of Woken Binds, but it's not a cleric-style active skill that you can't rely on it fully. And again, without any skill boost, you're foregoing the... He's basically like a transforming card that doesn't perform as well as a transforming card. But maybe you could say like the Orb Changer is helpful, but I still feel like it's a little hard overall. For his pixel form, lots of skill bind resist and a leader swap active. So if you don't have any leader swap active available, it will definitely be a helpful thing, but it's one of the weakest you can get. A very long 22 turn cooldown, and the secondary effect is not helpful. It gives you 100% damage reduction for 1 turn, but you probably don't need that really anyways because you've been swapping into position and you're supposed to go, and himself as a leader is not that great. Whatever you swap into is probably going to be stronger, so I feel like it's a bit awkward. If I have other leader swap options available, I would overlook his pixel form, but even then, his base form, I don't think it's going to have that much usage either. But then again, maybe you can argue it could be a damage solution for Sena teams, but it hinders your ability to transform. For Balrog, his main appeal is 450 times attack button to a given enemy. So stick this on someone with a massive attack stat, you can deal spectacular amounts of button damage, and you can definitely exceed the 2 million button from Zangief. I can't say his name properly, but Balrog can definitely be that option, but that's really all he's going to do. But you have to remember, it's a 20 turn cooldown, which is going to make it quite difficult to utilize in solo mode. Pixel Balrog is a balance killer solution, but I would be more interested in his base form because there are not many cards with this big of a scaling button, and it's much more unique compared to a balance killer. Like, there are many other balance killers possibly available, so you could possibly find something a little, just comparable, I should say. Blanka is only truly useful in their pixel form, I'd say, because in their base form, their 99 turn Wood Skyfall would be useful, but Durand is utilized as a card on most given teams, or Nautilus, who both provide Wood Skyfall buffs with their transformation, which invalidates the need to even consider Blanka. But Pixel Blanka is a truly interesting card because they have 3 attack while below 50% and a 7 combo, so they can have large amounts of personal damage. They have 2 enhanced wood combos and a 3-turn active skill which can be systemed. Because with 3 Pixel Blankas, you are able to actually create a system, and I was able to farm Training Arena 2. It's not the most efficient team overall, but every turn you can cut your health and make and then make 6 wood orbs. So you can break those up into 2 wood combos, and lo and behold, you deal bonus damage because passively you have 6 of these enhanced wood combo awakenings. And all your Pixel Blankas will hit hard. You can definitely be abused by Razor's based form, but I would prefer Razor because Razor has no combo count requirement. Osiris needs combos, and the whole idea was to do as little effort as possible. So I feel like it's going to be probably a harder sell, but who knows? Maybe in the future, Wood will have a strong systemable leader that can abuse Pixel Blanka. But one thing I want to mention is that with Blanka's system, you don't make hard orbs, and you're constantly cutting your health. So it's only going to truly work in dungeons where there are no preemptives, or you can plan around the preemptives in such a way, because you're going to be cutting your health and reducing your health so much that a preemptive will probably end your run. But some cool stuff, but you need to get 3 for a system, and I wouldn't encourage you rolling. Like I said, I acquired my system during the previous rerun of Street Fighter, so yeah. Alex, not good in this form, to be honest. Like, you get a row of light and 100% defense break. Kind of fishing. But his pixel form is a 3 million damage button. Outrageously high button for a 12-turn cooldown. It's useful to have. It can be used in solo mode because the cooldown is definitely low enough. You can obviously use it in co-op mode, but it's just nice to have. And you can even run him as a sub if for whatever reason you needed to, because it does have 4 skill boosts. But you have to remember, this button cannot be increased or decreased. And there are only 3 other options, like Diablos and Guri are much rarer cards that have 3 million buttons. So Pixel Alex is the most accessible big button available, so it's definitely nice overall. But again, if you don't button farm, it obviously has no value because you can't button your way through Shura Realm yet. Hopefully you never can. So, do I plan to roll in Dream Rolls? So, I rolled a bit in the previous event, so I did get some of the 5-star cards as well, so less motivation there. And even then, if I hadn't rolled before, I wouldn't roll now because they don't really provide enough value overall. So, for the cards I'd like to pick, I'd say Nash would be quite interesting. I don't have a truly great mono wood leader for Mantastic'c, so it would definitely be helpful. Chun Li for Fantastic, because it's nice to have more cleric options. I feel like my Christmas Grammar is still doing strong for Mantastic'c, but I didn't get them on my free rolls anyways, and I'm not rolling, so unfortunate. I would like to have Alex for Fantastic, because I don't have that big button there, but I have Alex on Mantastic'c. Mantastic'c would like Not the Man, because it's new, and maybe it'll get buffed, but none of the other were interesting. I already had the better ones, so to speak. So, in conclusion, I feel like the Street Fighter collab is an underwhelming event to roll in. The bottom rarity does not provide much value overall. And if you don't button farm or you didn't get 3 Blankas, they will hold even less value. So it's definitely a monster exchange, avoid rolling type of event. But at the same time, if you do enjoy the franchise or you don't mind what you do acquire, you definitely can roll because there is some interesting value that you could be found. But for myself, it's definitely a big skip. And I kind of question why I spent like so many hours writing and creating this when at the end of the day, I'm not even rolling or doing anything with it. But either way, hopefully all have a fantastic day. I wish you all the best luck in your own pad adventures and happy puzzling.